Today I'll be talking about what is protection as taught by Josh Korda. And although I secretly believe he's Jewish, he identifies as a secular Buddhist, monastic, often called a monk. And he runs an organization called dharmapunx. He says object constancy results from bids for attention being met and adequately mattering from the caregiver and enough monitoring as well. Just because we can't see you doesn't mean you disappeared. We still feel cared for even when alone. And that's what a secure base is. It is the confidence to explore the world and the sense we're important to others. And we can internalize the helpful qualities of the caregiver. We begin to actually soothe ourselves and appreciate our own developmental achievements. We can feel supported even with strangers because we trust the caregiver's guidance, and the self-confidence is the tool for life. It's tools for life because of the inner knowledge of being important, seen, maintained in the other's eye is going to continue with us through all our relationships in life. Relationships even for brief moments, just, in passing, seconds, just any interactions with a giver, receiver, care, any of it, where we show up as a self. There's an other. Otherwise, there's a degree of anxious, avoidant, fearful attachment where the outcomes can include for children unable to explore or confidently engage with strangers, who's pretty much everyone besides for the family you grew up in when you were a child. And then as you continue your life, you find people to substitute for the family, but you still are yourself. So everyone's kind of a stranger until you become friends or lovers. And we end up self-reliant, using toys for attachment, treating caregiver indifferently. This is like objects that we don't treat someone special because why bother? And we can ramp up emotions in order to be seen or shut down because of belief they'll never be cared for or seen. And the outcomes for adults can include not feeling that we matter, are seen, or are important, chronic stress or arousal of the nervous system, which is hypervigilance, mind racing. And in emotionally isolating people, it's like a lower immunity, higher anxiety, lower quality of sleep, and less reward or pleasure, which even can result in anhedonia, which is no reward or pleasure. And loneliness is the biggest decomposer of the ability to function in the world and the biggest contributor of death. That's a big deal. Loneliness is the biggest decomposer of the ability to function in the world and the biggest contributor of death. Staying well connected to others who care about us is one of the best ways we can care for ourselves. We can imagine another being there as a way to compensate for the vulnerability of feeling alone. And in childhood, the transitional object chosen will, like a security blanket, a very large fly, or maybe a bee. I'd like for it to go outside. So a transitional object, you might think a security blanket, chosen will replace the absent or unavailable caregiver. This could be a phone or an iPad. Eventually, children start developing inner speech, and from what parents say, as verbal commands, and this creates a sense that parents are in their mind. So literally our thoughts start to be, this inner chatter starting at 2 or 3 is the repetition of the parental words. And that's necessary to transition to independence by feeling someone when we're alone. We externalize our temptations and other attachment issues and doubts, often from the voiced words of a disempowering caregiver. So this is likely for people who had persecutory or overwhelming parents, and invasive parents controlling, monitoring them. And this becomes like a sense of there's ghost energy around, harmful beings, scary entities in their imagination. And this is people who spend a lot of time alone, usually invariably, and create an external presence to keep them company, but it's often not one that's feeling safe or comfortable. So our skills are, obviously, journaling is a big one. Look at where I'm getting this information from. My journal, I wrote when I was learning from him. My notes. I wonder what's up with that fly bee. And the other one is practicing visualization and projecting a protective being with us. It's how to feel protected. I would recommend many from the Bible. There are many of spiritual guides. And even someone well-regulated or connected can have a psychosis if they're in solitary for if they're alone for 4 to 5 days even. And this is the dopamine responsible pattern, which is, this is why it's mentioned pleasure earlier, because dopamine is also there to spot patterns, even in dense or chaotic environments, because we evolutionarily benefited from that over the course of time, from seeing things that aren't even there for survival, like seeing a predator, better than to not see a predator that could be there. So when you're hunting for food, there's little loss when you're reacting to false positives versus the danger of ignoring false negatives. Better to find the food than to not, in case it is, right? But also the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and obviously also with predators. So increased dopamine is increasing the firing of the pattern recognition. And in addicts, this could actually go so far, increase dopamine to paranoia, schizophrenia, bipolar. And now we could say it's not really addicts, clearly it's trauma, separation from the caregiver. This is the fusiform gyrus in the parietal lobe areas. Parietal lobe areas are like here. You have temporal lobe, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe. And then the fusiform gyrus, which is inside. And then we have loss of attachment, figures in later life, like adulthood. The left knows right away because it's constantly updated, but the right is a timeless realm of experience and associations, which is why people could perceive the presence of a dead person with them in a non-contextual way. And we have things like Shiva in the Jewish heritage for a year, but really there's the Shloshim, 30 days, there's the first week. And these are like altogether a year to integrate, but really a week and then a month, to integrate the knowledge into the right side, which takes time. And the right side also fills in the periphery with predictions from the occipital lobe. So this is our like visual inner world. And it's sort of like filling in the blanks on the outside visual world from the inner. And I mentioned about trauma once with the addicts and paranoid, schizophrenic, bipolar, but this is pretty much what's invading the entire world, we would say, because of all the isolation and dopamine production that happened during the quarantines of corona pandemic. So people went into this. It was a type of mourning, type of grief, but also a type of disconnection from the left and right brain. So, someone's here, but they don't care about me, or there's no one here and I need care, like these things. So trauma is we can compartmentalize only if we dissociate during the event. So most of us can understand this, that the right hemisphere does this with the orbital frontal lobe, orbital frontal area. So events can be poorly integrated into the left side, which actually understands and knows, even though it knows right away. It's just in trauma, we're like getting through the moment, but we're not actually taking in the information. So we actually don't get to integrate. So therapy, especially mindful therapies, or like something with the eyes like moving around, like I spoke about this in a different video recently called eye gazing into things, but also like flittering around the eyes, EMDR. This can inform the left from the right that the trauma is over, like these kinds of things. And I'm gonna stop here and wish you a blessed day.